Good evening. Colleagues and guests, this August 2nd, 2021 regular meeting of the Mount Horeb Area School District Board of Education shall come to order. Roll call: Diana. Here. Jeff.
Here.
Jessica. Here. Jim.
Here.
Leah. Here. And Rod.
Here.
Shelby, has this meeting been properly noticed and certified?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. If able, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1B, Mr. Myers, would you please read our mission statement this evening?
Absolutely. The Mount Horeb Area School District, in partnership with the community, is dedicated to nurturing, educating, and challenging all students, preparing and empowering them to be productive, responsible, and self-fulfilling members of society.
Thank you. Item 2A, approval of the presented revised agenda. Are there any revision requests from the board?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion made by Rod, second by Diana to approve the agenda as presented. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Item 2B, approval of the July 21st, 2021 board meeting minutes.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion made by Rod, seconded by Jeff to approve the July 21st board meeting minutes. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Item 3, school news. Dr. Salerno.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all here tonight. A couple of great things happening, even as we turn our calendar into the month of August. Kids are coming back into our buildings. Today, Paul was telling me about the engineering club that was here in the middle school commons, sponsored by our friends at the rec department. The rec department does a number of great things and a great partner with the school district, and the engineering club being one of them. Another is an opportunity for our incoming kindergartners here in a few weeks to kind of get ready for the school year. And then, wouldn't you know, our high schools, we're starting to see students, in addition to band camp ramping up. Today, I think, was the first day we issued pads and uniforms and gear and ready to get started for a great football season. So thank you very much for all that our families are doing in order to ensure that our kids get a great start to the year.
Thanks, Steve. Do any board members have anything to share? Okay, moving on to item 3B, citizens' comments. A reminder to citizens speaking tonight. Citizens' comments are a chance to give your Board of Education your input, but we cannot engage in a discussion with you at this time. Shelby, do we have anyone signed up to speak? Not yet. Would anyone present like to make a citizen's comment? Thank you. Please start by stating your name for the record and your full address, and then you're allotted 3 minutes.
Would you be able to speak in the
Sure.
microphone, please? Thank you so much, Mrs. Monta.
I have so much, I don't know if that's going to work. I want it to be my folder. So, Patty Wanta, 309 South Brookwood Drive. So I just want to address the mask situation that we have. I wrote the board a letter, always back up by himself with science-based evidence. I have several things that I want to address today about why masks don't work. There's no science, absolutely nothing that proves that masks work. CDC, when I looked for their evidence-based information on how masks work, they did have an article, but that article failed the peer review, so it is invalid. I also want to address the pathogens that were found in face masks just after a very short time of being worn. They include diphtheria, pneumonia, meningitis. They also included parasites, fungi, and other bacteria. The other pathogens found were ulcers, acne, strep throat. So this is what we're asking our little children who have like almost a 0% chance of dying unless they have some sort of underlying condition. Children may get COVID or the Delta variant from an adult, but they don't spread it or die from it. So to ask to put masks on our children and to ask them to breathe in harmful pathogens, parasites, fungi, ulcers, acne, strep throat, all these things that they can get is completely child abuse. And we're not going to stand for it anymore. These are our kids. We're in charge. We should have a choice to be able to say, yes, our kid can wear a mask, or no, our kid can't wear a mask. And if you're for masks, how would you feel if somebody said to you, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to wear a mask. That's how people feel that don't want their children masked, that don't want their children breathing in pathogens and harmful things. Like, besides the fact for kids with disabilities also, it is so detrimental. It's way worse than you can ever imagine, especially kids that need to see the mouth, need to see the lips. You're doing such a disservice to our kids. And as parents, we have the right to say, yes, we want to mask our child. No, we don't want to mask our child. We're the parents. The government doesn't get to decide. We're done. I know that almost every teacher or staff member is vaccinated in the school. So Dane County has one of the highest percentages in the country for vaccination. Nobody in this county should be forced to wear a mask at this point. With the vaccination rates, this is why we got vaccinated. This is ridiculous. This can't continue. There's going to be a new variant every 4 months, every 3 months. Like, when does this stop? When does this end? This is child abuse. Stop, for our children's sake.
Thank you, Ms. Monson. Would anyone else like to make citizens' comments at this time? Yes. Please call the microphone.
Sure. It's just Polly Meyer, and my address 10869 Smoky Mountain Trail in Blue Mountains. And I currently have 5 kids, and I pulled all of my kids out last year because it went virtual. My kids don't like virtual. I have one that has an IEP. You guys sent him home with a Chromebook. He threw it, he hated it, he didn't connect. You did open the schools up last fall for him with an IEP after 2 months, and he did go back in. And I was so grateful for that. He had come back and he had regressed so much. And that is so devastating to a parent with a kid with special needs. I mean, they're learning to read, they're learning to do their math, and they're always behind. And now he's really behind. And so you open the school, you sent him in, and he doesn't wear a mask. And now he doesn't even wear his CPAP at night. So now I have that a double fold that I told him, you don't have to wear a mask. The world is sick. And he says, but I'm not sick. And I'm like, I know, baby, but the world is sick. And he says no. So he went to school, he didn't wear a mask, and he was exempt in the Dane County class. He didn't go to school with the rest of the kids though. He was still in his special ed room. So that right there is not acceptable to me. He misses his friends. He wants to see his teachers. I am fully okay with whoever wants to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. You want to wear a mask? Wear a mask. But don't make kids wear a mask, especially my little guy who doesn't understand it, who doesn't get it. His siblings, they don't want to wear a mask either. So I'm not here to say right or wrong. I'm just saying people should have a choice. And you need to let us have a choice. Because at the end of the day, they come home, they're out in the world without a mask. Everywhere they go this summer, they were with all their friends. None of them had masks on. So I don't know why you want to put them into the school and make them all wear a mask. Please let it be their choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other citizens that wish to make a comment at this time?
Erin Ruck from Mount Horeb. I wasn't prepared for a comment here, but I'm just going to echo the word choice. Because I think, again, this is what this comes down to. It has to be about choice. The science is out there. We know that masks are not being effective. We're seeing outbreaks of the virus in vaccinated populations right now. I apologize if we give some data to you, and I can definitely send it to you after this meeting. But the science is out there, and this has to be about choice. I'm going to echo the same things. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, get vaccinated, don't get vaccinated. Your health, my children's health, is up to me and my family. And I want my kids to go to school here. I really do. We're in society right now without masks on, and it's okay. Everybody, we're not seeing huge outbreaks, we're doing okay. I saw a lot of our teachers last day of school out at Riley Tavern, no masks on. I didn't care, it was okay. It's their choice, okay? So let's all just embrace that, and I encourage you guys to keep choice. I know we're in Dane County, so it's really, really hard. You want to follow public health, I get that. But I implore you guys, as a small community, a tight-knit community, you're hearing echoes of choice. Please let the mask be a choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Are there other citizens' comments this evening?
I'm Tracy Gray. I live in Blue Mountain, so I'm 865 Smoky Mountain Trail. And Erin represents a group, along with a bunch of other groups, that has made some national press recently, just this week, I believe. And they wanted me to read the letter. So this is, okay, 38 Wisconsin parent groups reject lockdowns and forced masking in open letter to President Biden and the Wisconsin Governor Evers. President Biden and Governor Evers, we represent over 20,000 Wisconsin families across 38 parent advocacy groups, and we are here to inform you that your uninvited reign of destruction over the children of Wisconsin is finished. We have watched the last week unfold in abject horror, observing our government, institutions, and leaders failing our children at every turn again. Your renewed calls for lockdowns, enforced mask mandates, and masking in schools is not rooted in science and is objectively cruel to the most vulnerable in our society, our children. We believe that you are in fact aware of this and continue to play political games with our children, despite our efforts to work with you over the last 12 months. We are here to inform you that this ends today. Effective immediately, we will not, number one, mask our children in schools. Number two, allow you to use your private sector counterparts to enforce invasive mask mandates on our children in various stores or at community activities. Number three, subject our children to any further local, regional, or national lockdowns or movement restriction. Simply put, these are not your children, these are ours, and they too are Americans with rights. They are our responsibility and our most beloved, they are not yours. We applaud and support the school boards, the businesses, and localities that have respected our parental choice. We anticipate and appreciate their continued support of our right to choose what is best for our children and individual families. If you are a parent reading this, hear us clearly. You are not alone. We urge you to connect with other parents and make your voice heard. We are strong. We are united. We are in control. We have never and will never co-parent with the government.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Other citizens for citizens' comments?
Hi, I'm Christine German, 3428 Little Boulevard, Mount Horeb, Wisconsin. I guess I would just like to say that with this new Delta variant, what we're being told now is that people who are unvaccinated can transmit it between each other much more than they could before. And it's not about if our kids, the likelihood of our kids getting sick, or but it's them passing on to others who are vulnerable. I had, 2 years ago, my husband was on in the ICU for 3 months on a ventilator. And it's a special kind of hell I wish I had nobody ever. And the chance that that could happen to somebody in your family, it will destroy you. It will. It's not a risk I'm willing to just put out there. And I understand I want to give people choices. I am very much, if you knew me, live and let live, everybody be yourselves, and embrace differences. But I don't feel safe for me to send my kid to school, even wearing a mask in a classroom, unmasked people. And if my child were exposed, or somebody in the class was exposed, what the guidelines say right now is that if everybody's wearing masks, only the child that was exposed is quarantined. If everybody's unmasked, that whole class gets shut down. And that's a lot of learning we lose for our children. So, I mean, maybe there's a different option. Maybe it doesn't have to be all or the other. Maybe we can have classes where children want, their parents want them to be masked all day. The teachers, too, have a hard time because they're going to have to try to keep these masks, or maybe they're not, on the kids where parents want them to wear masks. What are we going to do? I mean, it is awkward for me, I'm vaccinated, be in this room with everybody masked, but that's where I feel safe. And I want to rip this off and be like, oh, yeah, I'm cool and everything's fine. If it's hard for me, it's going to be hard for my child as well. And I don't want to put that on the teachers as another thing they have to worry about. Oh, these 3 children they need to worry about, and these ones they don't, and keep distracting. It's much easier for them if they're in another environment. So if we can come up with some creative solutions to help everybody get what they want. I'm not saying that, everybody has to fit into one mold. So, thanks.
Thank you, Christine. Are there other citizens for citizens' comments this evening? Yes, please come to the mic.
My name is Amanda Braverman Brown. I live outside the district and can provide that address later if you need it. I'm clearly an advocate of masking. That's my family's choice, and I respect that it's not everybody's. I think I'm fine. I don't envy the position that you guys are in, and can accept it respectfully. My request is just that we get information in time to make informed decisions for ourselves. As was mentioned earlier today, kids were back in buildings today, and mine were supposed to be some of those. And even though I attempted to get information in advance about what to expect, what was required, what would be taking place, I was unable to get that until I arrived in the building. And so I know that whatever the decision is going to be the decision. I just want to be able to make an informed choice and just request that the information is given in time for us to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Any other citizens or citizens' comments this evening?
I just have one really. I'm Katie Max-Wander, 406 West Main Street, Monroe. I've always been a person that has believed that people should be able to do what feels right for their family. My friend lives in Monarchy right now, and she said that right now, she's for masking, but what they're doing is that they're surveying parents, and I'm kind of piggybacking off the other parent. They're surveying parents, and they're trying to figure out what to do themselves to make it so that not everybody's fitting into a box. And they're looking to see if they can make it work where parents who want to be masked would be, in a group of other parents who want their kids to be masked, whereas the other kids can be optional. And it was just something that I thought maybe it would be an option for our district as well. I don't know what the survey is for all the parents in this district, but to see what parents want and how that would work with us.
Thank you, Ms. Mace-Mander. Other citizens for citizens' comments this evening? Last call for the start of the meeting, citizens' comments. Thank you. You will also have an opportunity at the end of this meeting to remark as well. Moving on then to item 4A, personnel transactions. Dr. Solero, do you have any remarks?
Just one addition, if you don't mind, please. There is an addendum to tonight's personnel transactions, please.
I don't see any items.
Okay, please hold. It came to us at about 4 o'clock this afternoon, so excuse me just a moment. Members, let us stick with the game plan we have. We didn't provide you ample notice of this, and so I'd ask if we could please bring that before the board at the next meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Solero. Board members, questions or clarifications on the presented personnel transactions? Motion to approve. Second. Motion made by Diana, seconded by Jessica to approve the personnel transactions.
I have a question on 1B.
Okay, proceed.
Okay. The last year this person was at 0.9, and he's been class sizes for that area of instruction going up 20 to 25 like it has been in the last 2-3 years.
Thank you. Referring to our ag program, and that individual was approved by the board to have a 0.5 FTE contract. Because we build our master schedule around the needs of our students, for the very reason that you just talked about, we have a larger number of students interested in ag. We are asking the board to allow us a 1-year enhancement to their contract at a 0.8 FTE. It automatically resets back to a 0.5 though.
Okay. But is that going, that 0.8 going to be an issue if we keep growing and classes get filled up?
Of course, we want to respond to the needs of our student enrollment, so if we find that it's necessary for us to increase the FTE based upon the teacher-pupil ratio, we'll be prepared to do that. At this point, we find that we're really in a good spot. Of course, once we see the students arrive, we can offer another recommendation if need be. Thanks for asking.
Okay.
Further discussion, Leah? Question. D1 and 2, what does that do to our already dwindling bus driver supply?
We are continuing. This is actually very good that we have a lot of people here tonight because I think we're commercial. Call your friends and family and other neighbors for a rewarding career in bus transportation services. Seeing those kids every morning really is a treat. Yeah, we need all hands on deck. I'm sure you only have to listen to the radio to hear that we're not the only school district. I heard an advertisement on the radio for another district. They're good people, but come here and work for us. It really is something special about this district, and I do think we're tight. It would be misleading you if I didn't state the obvious. But we still have 30 days until the little dumplings arrive, and we want to be prepared to keep on pushing until we can get as many drivers as possible before we announce something different.
Thanks, Leah. Further discussion? And returning to the motion on the table made by Diana and seconded by Jessica to approve personnel transactions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Item 5, our consent agenda. Would any board members like to pull out letters A through D to remark individually?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Rod, seconded by Jessica to approve the consent agenda. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Moving on to our discussion items. Item 6A, recognition of the 2020-2021 girls golf team. Dr. Solero.
Yeah, this is so exciting.
These superstars.
Yeah, boy, not only are they great athletes, but they're great scholars as well. Coach, I see you're in the audience too. Thank you for your leadership in setting the tone, tempo, and tenor for what's expected of our student athletes. The Golf Coaches Association of Wisconsin, they are very proud to announce the recipients of the 10th annual Team Academic All-State Award. And this has been established to recognize high school golf students and particularly those students with grade point averages by team at being a 3.25 GPA or higher. And as I know, I've done a little homework, many of you were even higher than a 3.25 GPA, which speaks volumes to you. And so Colleen Nessheim, who's our activities director, would love to be here tonight, but she's across the street with all of our new coaches. But how fortunate we are to have our principal, Cody Lundquist, in the audience tonight. Cody, board members, would it be okay if we invited our student scholars down as I mentioned their names? We'll go in alphabetical order. Let's start with Gabby. There she is. Good evening, Gabby. Why don't you have us stand right here, and what we'll do is we'll take a picture of everybody together. And then Kate Donaldson. Yeah, how's that? Yes. Kate. Ella Fager. Hi, Ella. Welcome. Ellie Lombardo. Welcome. And last but certainly not least, Emily Wallace. Let's give these fine men. I love pictures with people. Principal Lundquist, don't go anywhere yet.
Oh, there's just not a golf room to stand on.
Okay, be careful now.
We don't want to.
We need you on the golf course.
Oh, my God, there's a coach too.
Coach in here?
Is Coach here? Yeah, here he is, coming up too. Come on, coaches.
Someone's got to score these grades.
In fact, it would be my honor if you were to provide these to each of our students. Absolutely. Yes. Coach is handing out a medallion to each of you that recognizes this auspicious occasion. And then I'll follow up with your very own Mount Horeb Viking.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, don't sell it on eBay.
Thank
Okay, there you go, guys. And did we get a picture with you?
Get ready here.
And then I've got this. Would you hold on to that, Emily, for us, please? It's a nice plaque. Okay. Can you get us all in? Awesome. Awesome. Round of applause for that. Lots of people who love you, who are here in the audience tonight. Could you introduce those people for us?
Oh,
Emily, go
I'll go
first.
first. I have my mom, Anita.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you.
I drove myself.
Oh, yeah. I got my mom and my dad and my sister.
Welcome. You should be very proud.
Well, Abby got and Terry got.
I have my mom and dad, Roger and Anthony.
Welcome.
Oh, my parents are working right now.
All right. And coaches, thank you for all you've done to inspire our young people to really make our district better. All right, onward and upward. Thank you guys. Go ahead and give that to coach, and then we can get that on display in the trophy case. How's that sound? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll proceed after that excitement. Item 6B, committee member reports. Jeff, you're going to have to bring that kind of energy, okay? Mr. Cannon, are you ready for your buildings and grounds report?
Yes.
Thank you.
We met last Monday at 5:30. Dave Reed gave us his report of the fields were getting aerated and putting down dirt to fill in gaps and seeded. There was a lot of concrete work done over at the PC. There was some trees that were cut that fell over onto the fence by the ELC that got taken down. A lot of other trees were taken down that were dying or had dead. And they put them into piles, and they got the village to come with their big unit and the big trucks to haul them away to the compost site. He also is trying to get bids for a package deal to have trees that have been cut down replaced. And he's trying to get a deal or a bid rounded up for having tree stumps ground out. And the bus side will get all ready for inspection, which is coming up around the 9th, next week, I guess. And they have the cameras, the new camera system, put into one bus, and they actually ran it to see how it would work, and it was working real well. And they're going to try and get the rest of them into the buses before the end of the summer. And the ones that will be used for spares will be done up last on that situation. He also stated that yes, there was a couple of bus drivers being approved here tonight, but he still had, I believe, 4.5 routes left to fill. So he's encouraging anybody that is willing to make a few extra dollars to, if you wanted to drive bus, to contact him. And there's one other thing. I can't remember. It was about, that was Dave Reed's report. They got a new van, used van for the his workers. One of them was going in bad shape, and they got rid of it and got a new one. That would be it for my report.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions for Jeff? All right, Mr. Hannah. We'll move on to Mrs. Aregonia, report for finance, please.
Alrighty. So we met on Monday, July 19th. We had no donations to consider at this month's meeting, and the bulk of our meeting was focused on reviewing the annual meeting booklet. Scott Young reported that the audit was completed, and the auditors were incredibly impressed and pleased, and the audit was very successful. Not surprising. And then to go back to the annual meeting booklet, the budget prepared for the annual meeting is the one that we approved in the spring. As the budget, more information becomes available, we have to go back and revisit it. The total budget, including all funds, is $37,452,664, with the general operating budget reflecting a balanced budget of $27,559,843 in revenues and $27,559,843 in expenditures. The tax levy is estimated to be $13,572,789. It is a reduction from the prior year, and the mill rate is estimated to be $8.34 per $1,000 of equalized value, which is also a reduction from the past year. And our next meeting is September 13th.
Thank you, Jessica. Questions for Jessica? Yes.
I would just also add that next Monday is our annual meeting, which we will spend a lot more time talking about that.
Thank you. The annual meeting she refers to is one where we invite our citizens to come. We do a deep dive and approval of our budget. All right, next is safety and wellness with Mrs. Lipska.
Well, I actually gave my report at the last meeting because we had the joint education meeting. So if you want to hear it again, I can give it to you. Otherwise, I don't have anything new to report.
All right, we'll let you go this time. So then we'll move on to 6C, our summer school report. Mr. McCormick.
You need me to come up?
Yeah,
Come over. All right.
Two microphones, please.
Great. All right. So I compiled up a little presentation for you for this summer school program. In order to do that, I think it would be appropriate to talk a little bit about where we started. 3 years ago, 3 years ago, we started a new kind of vision with that summer school program where we added, like the kids like to call, fun programs, or we would more like to say enrichment programs. And so we would have classes between 8 to 11:30. We had 3 classes. For that school, or for that summer school, we had 369 students enrolled K through 8th grade. And we filled up within 3 days of that, and we had everybody at the intermediate center. So if you can just picture kindergartners with 5th graders and 8th graders running through the halls, it was a joyous time. Last year, things took a little bit of a turn. We did a virtual platform for that school year, or for that summer school. And it went about as well as it could have. Teachers were still engaged. Parent feedback was still supportive. But it obviously wasn't the same that we all want and would like to continue. So looking at what we did for this year, there were still a lot of ups and downs, a lot of questions as we still tried to formulate a plan. So usually we usually had it in place by January. In our discussions, we pushed deadlines back for teacher enrollments and what classes were going to be offered up until April. We decided to just do a reading, math, and science class for 1st through 5th grade. And then we had a intro or kindergarten kickoff for kindergartners. And 6 to 8, we had reading, writing, and math offered for this year. We took teacher recommendations and we compiled, or we had attendance 258 students enrolled for those programs this past 4 weeks. Okay. First session was June 21st through July 2nd. Took a week off for just a break, crosses over to July 4th. Then we came back for July 12th through the 23rd. The kindergarten stayed in a self-contained classroom environment so that the teachers could manage and be flexible with their times and what the lessons could instruct. Otherwise, the other grade levels rotated between the classes provided and had a schedule for about 55 minutes per class period. For the middle school, the IC students had 3 classes at 45 minutes with a 35-minute recess and snack break throughout the morning. So that is what the overall picture, or that's what the structure looks like. As we moved into, as we've taken every year, we wanted some parent surveys to kind of see how things were going. To give you a sense, when we did this in summer of 2019, out of the 112 responses, 97% said that they would still like to attend, or their students benefited from attending. In 2020, we had 77 responses, with 96% saying that that their students benefited. This year, while our responses were down, we did have 100% that said their students benefited from the summer school program. This is not surprising in our next kind of survey results. This is the first time we've introduced it to our students. I was pleasantly surprised that it was as high as it was. But some of the responses that they provided were they got to be with their friends, they got to meet new people, and the science is cool. So there are some good things that they recognized and feel supported with that. Teachers. I can't stress enough about how dedicated they are. Every morning they were ready to try something new. And of the 22 teachers that we had, 15 responded with all of them wanting to come back next year. As far as our daily attendance rate goes, I think it was pretty balanced. You'll notice some dips right around the 4th of July weekend. And there are continuously, or I say historically, looking back 2 years ago, the middle of July is also a big family vacation time period, so that's where I think we saw a little bit more dips in our daily attendance numbers. So there is a quick nutshell of our successes some specific feedback that I got back from families is that they appreciated the social interactions that the summer school provided, the consistent learning. It was a schedule maintained throughout the day. Love the science, as I said, and one of the families responded with saying, you know, it was being excited to go back the next day. So I can't stress enough how well this is being received through our community and how encouraging that is. So students, we broke it down a little bit for you. 85% said their friends were the biggest reason that they liked summer school, which I can't argue with. But I also like the next number is that they also appreciated their teachers, and they love their teachers. As students like, there was no homework kind of obligation, so you know, that was a bonus for them. As far as our teachers go, everybody had a great time. They all wanted to return, as we said earlier. The schedule flexibility, what that means is that we had 3 teachers for each grade, K or 1 through 8. In the middle school, we had a rotation. Actually, we did a little bit more co-teaching between the math and the reading and writing. So the grade level teachers, so for example, 4th grade teachers got together and was able to manipulate some schedules that fit their time allotted for each class. So I thought that giving them some autonomy had some beneficial results as well. Let's see. One thing I did not include in our in the presentation is that we had a number of high school or soon-to-be high school student assistants. In fact, some teachers might tell you that we had too many that just want to be part of the program and help out. It's kind of neat to watch them interact, not only in the classroom, but to be able to pull out and then just have them practice individually, but then also play a game of kickball out during break time. So our community is really strongly invested in our program, and our students do want to give back. So I did want to give a shout out to all the student assistants that helped me out immensely. Moving forward into next year, enrichment classes are back on, I'll say back on the table, just with knowing what we know right now. So that could be some of the things that we've done in the first year was board games or card games, yoga, mindfulness, biking or running with Mr. McIntyre, which that was always pleasant to do in the middle because Mr. McIntyre got his money's worth, we'll say. So enrichment classes are a priority. We want to set up our dates and our locations because Monday or July 4th falls on a Monday. So there's been some teacher feedback about what we can do for that schedule, for that flexibility. As I said, class offerings, and then continually moving, promoting the program with our families, spread the word, get it out there for our enrollment numbers to exceed 358. Another addition or things that we've learned from the past is using Infinite Campus wisely so that we can effectively get not only the rosters to the teachers, but the families know what they're signed up for, what is still available. Some things that is noticeable for me, staff, while energized and ready to go, it's really hard to think about summer school in the middle of May and trying to navigate both the regular school year and then looking ahead. So possibly a staff move-in / orientation day where we can go over some of our expectations and some of our logistics, but then also give our high school students assistants, a little bit more training and sort of expectations. They're here for, some of them have been there for 70 of our 80 hours. So knowing what is expected of them will be even more beneficial as we move forward. Okay. So if you have any questions, I am right down the hall, or I will be around. So I thank you for your time.
Yeah, I have a question right now.
Yeah.
You mentioned high school students. Is there any thought, like for the enrichment classes, maybe a high school student could teach one, thinking something like chess or art or some sort of class along those lines?
It's a table. I think we need to just take a look at what the summer school guidelines as far as what licensure, certified.
Yeah,
kind of
or to
things
count the
would be.
minutes, we need a certified teacher to do it.
That would be the only thing, but I'm pretty sure that they could be an assistant, and we did have a few assistants. I don't want to say lead, but kind of mentor into someone and share some of their personal history. So that was beneficial.
Are there any questions for Mr. McCormick?
Thank you for your time.
Presentation, that was fantastic.
Might just take a moment to put a spotlight on you, Mr. McCormick. Your leadership has just been exceptional. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to get us to this point. An example of this is the work that Eric and his colleagues did, our teachers, our support staff did, to reach out to specific students to invite them personally to come to summer school, because we saw some gaps in their achievement as a result of issues that occurred last year. Your personal touch and your warm spirit go miles with our kids. I just love watching you out in front of the schoolhouse every day, saying hello and welcoming them, and I know how much they care about you as you do that. So thank you, and I hope you know how much we appreciate you. Can we give a round of applause to this?
Okay, moving on to 60, our latest information advocacy report. Life Ready Indicators, Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Straka.
You sharing? No.
Take a chair if you want.
Thanks for having us here tonight. We're presenting on what are the life indicators about being life ready after high school, and what does that look like? And so Sarah's going to start us off.
So we have 4 indicators for this goal that we have for our strategic plan. The first one has to do with silver cord hours, and I'm going to piggyback off from Mr. McCormick, because one way that students can earn silver cord hours is through volunteering for summer school. So if you're not familiar with our silver cord program, it's been around for, I would say, almost a decade now, if not more, where students can volunteer within the community, can volunteer within the school district, and be recognized for those hours of volunteering at graduation and wearing a silver cord. That's the silver cord hours. And if you can move down a bit more on the screen, we provided a 5-year view as to the percent of students, the percent of graduated students or the seniors who complete their silver cord hours. We've had some interesting years, especially this year, and we did see a dip in the percent of the graduating class of 2021, 18% of students. And that's even with Principal Lundquist and the team changing the hours requirement from 140 down to 120 for this year. So I believe we'll see those numbers to go up, especially because summer school was in person this year. Students could earn hours, whereas previous school year, when students couldn't earn 40, 60, 80 hours, they didn't have those opportunities, and summer school is a good example of that. But we also are making a concerted effort to desegregate or gather more. When we talk about our equity work, this is part of it, really breaking down our numbers to see if we have systems in place where some kids can't access certain things. And silver cord is one area that we broke down to see who are the students who are completing silver cord. As we can see on the left 2 columns, that's just the total percent and number of students within that graduating class. So as you can probably imagine, The class is split about 50-50 males and females. But when we look at the number of students or the percent of students who complete silver core hours, definitely more females do, which is interesting. So this kind of data makes us scratch our head and say, why, right? Also, another example when, you want to scroll down a little bit more, Dr. Salerno, when we look at, for example, students who may be identified as free and reduced based on the free and reduced application, or students labeled with disability, we do see a discrepancy in the percent of students within that graduating class versus the percent of students who complete silver core hours. Again, scratch our head, we need to look at our systems that we have in place. That's an example of equity work that we're doing within our district. So Cody and I talked about this data, which he had an inkling of some maybe wonders as to are certain populations of our kids not able to access certain opportunities. And we'll continue that discussion moving forward. You go to the next one?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about academic and career planning. These goal-setting conferences and how we're working with academic and career planning has really been evolving over the last 5 or 6 years. Now it really takes a 6th grade throughout approach. We're really starting looking at classes, personal interests, inventories at the 6th grade level through a program called Zillow. Zillow follows the students all the way up through 12th grade. So when they're done and they graduate, they have an inventory, a career path planning that kind of is all encompassing. A few years ago, we've done a multitude of different programs, and kids they were like entertaining and funny, like, what did you get? And this is really about more accurate representations of what they're interested in and then connecting with the correct field choice. And so it really starts in that 6th grade. By 8th grade, they're looking at those options, and then they're developing plans for high school and what that's going to look like. It goes to the parents for approval, and then they develop kind of their 4-year plan of what high school is going to look like for them. During their freshman year, our student services team are having individual meetings with students, connecting, talking about what that looks like, making sure that they're on track and planning. And then starting the end of sophomore and the junior year, they're holding seminars during stat time to talk about different subjects, different areas, different levels of interest, so that kids can come and learn different areas. So the student services team is really looking at and using stat time as a building block to talk about academic careers and interests post high school careers. And so when they're done with their senior year, they've got Zillow kind of complete and a secondary plan ready to go, and so how we can support them along the way. So that's kind of that academic and career planning, which goes right into graduation rates. And so I'll just kind of be touching on that a little bit too. And if you go down to the chart, you can see that we have a pretty high graduation rate. In fact, it's kind of so low that we're able to really individualize who exactly is not graduating. And so when you look at the 2019-2020 data, and it talks about this in the report, it's 4 students didn't graduate. We know that 3 of those students were students with IEPs that continued into our 18 to 21-year-old program to an Operation Fresh Start. So just hadn't met graduation requirements or needed to continue to work on IEP goals, and the college and career ready weren't quite done. When you look at the 2021, it actually looks like it goes down a little bit. That's 5 students. All 5 students are students with an IEP and are all continuing with an 18 to 21-year-old track. So really, it's kind of, personally it's a little disappointing that our numbers look a little bit lower when it's really, these are planned activities of students that are continuing to receive educational services. They're not technically dropouts. We don't consider them that way. We're continuing to teach them, and we know that in a year or 2 that they will have that graduation. And in fact, some of them even walk through ceremony and then are waiting to receive the actual diploma until they meet a few more IEP goals, which could be job placements or transitions. And I can tell you too that this is a discussion that the state continues to have. When I used to work at DPI, this was a discussion that we continued to have and tried to change that so it didn't look and affect your district's numbers, but there wasn't a solution back then, and it's still kind of the same way. So. Plan for graduation.
The last one, 4th one, is our attendance rates. And regarding attendance. So this is the final snapshot now for 2021. Overall, our attendance percentages have been strong. And this year they were stronger because we had the virtual option for families. There was the flexibility on Wednesdays or during other times where students didn't have to necessarily miss a class because they could be flexible and schedule appointments during times that aren't typical in the normal school year. So we do see an increase there for the school year. And again, looking at if we did have some absenteeism, what populations there were, and we just put that below the chart as well, because it makes me scratch my head as I work and sort of oversee, coordinate with our EL learners. Brian works with students who are with a disability in that program. It makes us scratch our heads and think, what within our systems, or how can we do a better job supporting families if for some reason that they need to be out with their students. So again, breaking down the data is really making us think a little bit more about what we do and how we do it. And again, it's systems we have in place that can really help kids. That's all we have, right?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Questions for Brian or Sarah?
I have a question, because my kid will be mad if I don't ask, but is there a plan for this coming school year to lower the silver cord, since the students that were juniors last year didn't really have a good chunk of time to actually do any volunteering?
I would think, Cody, I'm gonna let you take that if you'd like, or you can defer, but I would think we would look at the data because we do track silver cord hours every year. So freshmen, you can look at previous data to see where if they're on track or not on track.
Yeah, we're taking a look at it. We're also looking at just how we promote silver cord. I think we can do a better job of promoting opportunities and reaching out to businesses and stuff. So I actually think we're going to have more opportunities this year than maybe previously. And then kind of what we accept for silver cord hours too. I think we really want to start to think about, back to the equity piece, is what can we accept for silver cord hours. So in terms of the hours, we're still looking at it because I think we also want to see on average what year do students really start to hit that piece home, and maybe take a look at it. While we are seeing huge dip because this class needs those opportunities, we'll absolutely try to find a way to make it work. There's nothing set.
I told him I know the people that have to sign his diploma, and so he has to have enough silver cord hours. So
it's still a work in progress, and there's nothing that we like settle on party. We want to make sure that we do it right by the kids.
no, I agree.
Other questions for Brian or Sarah? Yes, Jessica.
Brian or Sarah, for ACP, all the things that we're doing are fantastic. Has there been any discussion at the high school level having some of those meetings along with families? So that, I know all the resources are shared, but it's not quite the same as being able to have a conversation or ask questions, or I just wonder, I know it's an extra burden, but.
Yeah, we did that a few years ago where we kind of, like, that was the expectation, was that every parent was present, and then there was mixed results on that. And so we kind of went a different approach, especially kind of during COVID time. And so I know that we're going to relook at it again this year, maybe open up some of the seminars, be more willing to have parents, because I know that parents want to be involved in the process. So continue that discussion.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off that, the year or two that we did do it, we get a 55% parent participation rate. Because they were one-on-one conferences, and they were time intensive and they were good. But I do agree that, well, the virtual has opened up virtual opportunities now to make things easier for families. So regrouping again.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
In the back.
Oh, so, just from the board.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. If you'd like to make a citizen's comment at the end, though. Sure. Thank you. Very data-rich information. We move on to 6E, our summer facilities project. Mr. Dave Reed, how have you been?
I've been well. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I was just sitting up there thinking, boy, I could really whip out my old teacher hat and go on and on about how we get to this point and how my project budget comes to be. But to give you the quick notes, every year I get a portion of my budget is set aside for me to do work around the district. As you know, the past 3 years we've been doing a lot of stuff, right? And I inherited a list from my predecessor of all the things that should be nice to do if we had the money. Well, the referendum really knocked a bunch of that stuff off of that list. So thank you very much for allowing that to happen. And it leaves me with some of the stuff that I wouldn't necessarily get to, because some of the other stuff took so much money. But in a year, I make a plan of like, well, I'd sure like to get to this. I use input from building principals, from my custodians at the building, from my maintenance techs, board members suggest things. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that a lot of input into that list. So there's a long list out there. Currently, it's like, okay, when does this absolutely have to happen? What has to happen sooner? What can I push off to later? And then I come up with this plan. And every year, just like at home, yep, we're going to put a new deck on this year, but the water heater died. So there's a bit of jockeying throughout the year with the money and getting things paid for. So, and at the end of the year, we kind of, okay, this is where we kind of where we landed. So, in the past year, we've got some really, well, I believe, some really nice stuff that we've done, enhancements for the district. You know, there's stuff that you can see, and there's a lot of stuff that you can't see. That's, you know, HVAC work and stuff like that. That's not very glamorous, but you know, like a picture right here. This is the main gym at the high school. As part of the referendum last year, we had the middle school lights all retrofitted to LED, and they did the gym. And I went, oh, this is the thing. You know, this is really cool. And it's always one of those things that I will admit, I get antsy about some things. I walk into the main gym, it's all beautiful except there's lights. One would hang a little bit this way, one would hang a little bit this way, and some lights would be out, and it's like, oh man. And they're just awful. So we were able to retrofit the main gym with all LED lights. I mean, and to me, that's the last piece of the puzzle. Over the last few years, we redid the floor. We got bleachers on the referendum. We painted it. We got those red tubes in the middle. Took out that if some of you remember the old soffit that used to be there that the volleyballs would bounce off of when they played. So we've really given the gym a complete facelift, and the lights was kind of the last part of that. So that was one big one. Some of the other things that aren't quite so glamorous. When we were doing the work at the high school, in order to stay within our budget constraints and stuff like that, there were some things like, well, okay, maybe we just don't put that door in. We fit in our budget. And then we'll come back and get it on Dave's project budget, and that's been a couple of years now, and then finally I get around to replacing this door. With that means all the doors at the high school are brand new and not rotted out old metal things. So, again, it's sometimes it's kind of like, okay, we'll put that off for a little bit, and then we'll come back around and pick it up, and this is one of those years when we picked it up. The landscaping around the sign, the sign itself was funded from other places, but the landscaping wasn't included, so this spring my guys were able to clean that all up, and now the discussion is okay, so now it looks really plain. I've been approached, boy, you really got to put some plants and flowers and stuff there. Nope. But somewhere in the middle is a happy medium. Maybe we're going to put some planters out there. I like flowers, don't get me wrong, but I want them contained. I don't want to, vines growing over the top of the sign and all. So this was a nice little upgrade for the front of the high school. And we did the same thing at the intermediate center. This is the less is more thing. And these are all things done by my team. Most of the work that, I guess it varies. I like to do as much as I can in-house. I can control prices and things like that, and timing, like the lights at the middle school. That certainly was done by an outside contractor. But a lot of my guys will do a lot of this landscaping stuff in-house. There, got a suggestion from Dr. Salerno said, boy, that parking lot's really looking tough out there. I'm like, yeah, it sure is. And and then we were able to give it a little bit of love. It's just a nice freshen up. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. And I hope nobody breaks their ankle. People break their ankle anymore. Yeah, the potholes are gone. Yeah, they're so for now. Oh, and Jeff alluded to this, and there's more pictures there. We've gone on a tear cutting trees down throughout the district. I think at last count we're up to 24 trees had to go. And oddly enough, they're all ash trees. The Emerald Ash Borer has made its way to Mount Horeb, and you can see that's what most of the dead trees are in town. So, and guess what? There's 40 ash trees on our property, and now there's 20-ish. So anyway, again, we call an outside contractor to come and take those trees down. I know Colleen Nessheim was really happy She did particularly care for, being able to supervise stuff with all the trees in the way. Another little upgrade to the soccer, Steve, you can go back here for a second, another little thing, this is kind of on a personal note. I've been kind of harboring this ill will for a while. Because a long time ago, I had to run a soccer game, and then I had to get out and I had to walk over where the red arrow was there to shut the lights off. I'm like, really, this is where you shut the lights off? You have to stand in the wet grass, you have to open up an electrical panel, and you have to reach in and you have to turn the breaker off. I mean, that's ridiculous. All the rest of the lights in the whole complex are controlled by the concession stand. So anyway, we were able to, in my project budget, upgrade it so that now you don't have to walk over there and stand in the water. You actually shut the lights on and off, turn them on and off from the press box. So nice upgrade, Now we can move on. Okay, there's another thing. In the referendum, that was going to be grass. All right, a little patch of grass out there, and it's like, yeah, that wasn't going to work for us. It seemed like a great idea at the time. Let's make that grass. That's really cool. Kids can sit out there. Well, the grass never grew. The weeds did. And then when the grass finally grew, I was like, well, how are we going to mow that? That's ridiculous. So, we were able to. Then I bright idea was let's make it into mulch. Let's put flowers in this. That wasn't right either. Well, we put AstroTurf down. So now, playing out there. It's not a putting green, but it's funny. We had our retirement celebration. And we just draped it over there because it was so ugly. We put the carpet out there, and the very next day, we've got class, and I drive by, and there's a whole bunch of kids lounging out there at lunchtime, and I'm like, mission accomplished. That's exactly what we're looking for. So that's another one of those little in-house things we were able to do on my project budget. And also, as Jeff alluded to, sidewalks at the PC. I think somebody called them at one time the ankle breakers, right? I didn't even use it. Boy, that's really a pretty awful walk up there. And
we did have a broken ankle.
Yeah, well, and again, I agree, without doubt. And from a personal, once in a while, I get to sit in the cabin with the snowplow, and the sidewalk is all bumpy like that. I forget where those are at. I'm flying down through there, and all of a sudden you hit that speed bump, and next thing you know, your face planted against this windshield. So it was nice to get all of that done. I think there's a couple more pictures. I think we've got all of the sidewalks around the front of the PCR. Good. Now I've got my guys will be landscaping around there and stuff like that. And again with the trees, my goodness, in this picture alone, there's 8 trees that we took down in the spring. So, yeah, we got them all. We hadn't cleaned up the stumps before. Usually, was just take the tree down and get it gone. And now we've taken the time to catch up. And as Jeff alluded to, I'm working with a local nursery to maybe get a package deal on new trees. Come fall, I can get, there's what they call park grade trees, and residential grade trees. And everybody goes and picks out the really nice ones. And I don't want a Charlie Brown tree, but I wouldn't mind one that maybe has a little bit of a lean to it or something like that. As long as it's green and it grows, it's going to be okay. It's not an ash tree, so we'll see. So that's on the docket for coming up this fall. Hopefully I can get a bunch going. And I don't know, we got to come up with a creative way for people to donate trees to the districts.
Only privileges are currently.
Donate a tree, adopt a tree, grow a tree, whatever. So, anyway, what else we got for pictures in my list here? Oh, more sidewalks, more dead trees, all that's gone now.
I had to give you a round of applause on the sidewalk because that makes me so happy.
Yeah, I'm sure the skateboarders in town will find, just like they found the new blacktop at the middle school and the high school. Man, I tell you, you can go up there anytime of night and they're shredded. It's just like, they're going, wow, where's the jumps, man? Why didn't you do that? Anyway, and like I said, I've kind of got my list of things I'd like to do for the upcoming year. We want to add some critical temperature monitoring equipment to the ELC. One of the things about the ELC, it doesn't have the automated controls that the rest of the buildings have. So if for some reason the boilers go out, we don't know it till morning, and sometimes that's too late. So we're gonna add some of those things on there. We've been trying to retrofit the tennis court lighting for years. That's a shared project with the village because we kind of co-own that thing. They've had money some years, not had money. We're finally kind of come to the point where it's like, okay, we're going to get this because we want to play pickleball all night long, right? Well, at least till 10 o'clock. We have the furnaces and air conditioning at the district office are sad and they need to be replaced, so that's on my list of things to do. Plant trees, those kinds of things. So, yeah, that's kind of how my project budget goes. This is kind of the let's do these things, and every now and then something comes up that these guys say, boy, we really need of this or that. And we can work a little bit of my budget, a little bit of their budget. We can get those needs taken care of. It's nice to be able to spruce it up, but mostly it's been so nice because those bigger picture items got taken care of in the referendum, so it makes it easier to do these other things. So, thank you. Questions?
I just want to point out the main gym, one thing that you left off, air conditioning.
Yes.
That's an upgrade that we did to the.
Well, yeah, well, that's just it.
We're listing all these things, and I'm like, what about?
Holy cow, we put air conditioning in the odds gym.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, it's too cold in here. Don't say that too loud, I can shut it off for my phone. So, there's any other questions? Thank you.
Hey Dave, thank you. It's your attention and detail on these kinds of things that over time we're able to see big dividends. Savings in efficiency and lighting bill, electric bill.
Yeah,
Very
right.
thoughtful individual, and we're grateful that you're part of our team.
Thank you.
Can we give David a round of applause?
All right, very refreshing day, thank you so much. Now it's time to transition to action items, please, beginning with 7A, a second reading of policy 342.4, programs for children at risk. This is the second reading. Board members, do you have any further questions about this policy or its associated plan? Motion to approve. Motion made by Leah and seconded by Jeff to approve policy 342.4, programs for children at risk. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Policy 324.4 is approved. Item 7B, consider pandemic-related action for the school district. First, I think we need to thank Dr. Slater for keeping the board so well informed on the latest COVID recommendations that he sends very regularly on the county and federal levels. Last week, Public Health Madison and Dane County did release its recommendations for school, which I know that you all reflected on with great interest because we have now turned the calendar page into August. Our administrative team met last week with CJ Goodwin. If that name is not familiar to you, that is our school nurse, to engage in conversations and start planning for our students and staff. The results of this planning, plus anything the board may decide tonight, will also be shared with the community during our back-to-school virtual town hall on August 10th. But tonight, we'll first hear from Dr. Salerno about public health in the county's priority areas as they apply to our school, which we will first cover in the following 5 topics: vaccines, testing and tracing, sanitation measures, ventilation, and physical distancing. After Dr. Salerno leads us through the administration's thinking about these 5 areas, there will be time for your questions and discussion around these areas before we move on to the items that, of course, need our action. If not tonight, then very soon. And that's, of course, masking and quarantines, which we'll review in the same format. So Dr. Salerno, I'll turn it over to you now.
Good evening. Thank you, President Saylor. And just to reiterate my gratitude to our fellow team members for helping to provide counsel after reviewing a lot of data, talking with medical professionals in Dane County and even locally here in Mount Horeb, as well as reviewing local trends. The administrators you see here before you tonight, this is just the latest example, I should say, of their contributions to our school district. A lot of changes, a lot of curveballs this year, but yet they fielded like the Chicago Cubs. America's team.
We're not the bottom of the team.
They did a really good job, I guess is the best way I can say it. Seriously. Seriously. Dane County, like many counties around the country, have really seen an unfavorable trajectory in its COVID transmission rates. This has been called the 4th wave. And it's believed that the Delta variant is infecting unvaccinated individuals at a much higher rate than those who have been vaccinated. According to NBC News, just last night I was watching a report, unvaccinated individuals account for 90+% of recent COVID cases, many of which are a result of the Delta variant. In many instances, our intensive care units are filled with many unvaccinated individuals. Above all else that you hear me say tonight, please hear me say this. Please get the vaccine if you can. We are fortunate to live in a county that has one of the highest vaccination rates. One of our guest speakers said that this evening. In fact, upon speaking with Public Health Madison-Dane County on Friday afternoon, I learned that 81% of eligible individuals now have at least one dose of the vaccine. That's quite impressive. That's individuals 12 plus and older. And 79% of adults 18 plus have completed the series in Dane County. But we mustn't be complacent because we know that many people travel in and out of Dane County from some of our surrounding areas, either for work or for leisure, and that gives rise to a greater opportunity for spread. This is not an easy decision. And we know that we must rely on those things that worked well for us during the past 18 months or so. I might just stray from my written comments and just put up on the screen here for everyone a copy of the Public Health Madison-Dane County recommendations. And it's important that we denote these are different than requirements. There are no requirements at all in Dane County going into the upcoming school year. Here we are. And to President Saylor's comments, maybe before we get to masking and quarantining, it might be helpful for us just to step back and talk about what are best practices that we know work for us and have worked for us, kept our kids, kept our staff safe. We do intend to continue to explicitly teach to our youngest kids and provide breaks for all of our kids to hand wash as much as possible. And then remember now that as we have more and more children coming back into the schoolhouse, the question of respiratory versus COVID-like symptoms, sometimes they can be kind of viewed as the same. Teaching people about, sneezing into your arm and those kinds of things are certainly very important. Physical distancing, not a requirement. However, we know it to be a good practice. And so as you no doubt have already seen this document, maybe it's helpful for us to layer in some context as to the kinds of things that we will continue to do going into the fall. For example, we would propose children in the elementary schools to be assigned a lunch seat. So that way we can keep track of who's where and when in the event that we need to do some kind of a list of who has been in contact with whom. I think that there's an opportunity for us also to leverage access to our lockers. Maybe we don't need to have every student at their locker every class period. I think about the high school. They've got that brand new schedule, about 4 or 5 classes a day. And then that would mean that students don't have to bring all of their materials with them to every single class period, but maybe we schedule in breaks based on grade levels for kids to get access to lockers. Lunchtime seems like a really thoughtful time. But we also know that the recommendation is that when kids are at lunch, that they should be at least, hopefully, 3 feet apart from one another. And we intend to be able to honor that in our lunchrooms. For example, we have about 375 seats in our high school. On average, anywhere between 275, 300, 325 students who will eat in the lunchroom. And so we've got some space. The atrium has served us very well to help out with juniors and seniors. That might be a special privileged area that will allow us to space out a little bit more, give students access to lunch in a safe way. We know at the middle school that we can assign student seats because the children eat lunch in houses together. And we do know that the space is at a premium here, right? And so while we may not be able to add more tables to the building, we can identify where we're going to place those tables. Other thoughtful things that they intend to do are going to be extended and cascade even down into the elementary levels. Let's take a moment to talk a little bit about ventilation. I'll come back to contact tracing if that's okay, and quarantine, because I really believe that that's kind of married, if you will, to masking. What you do with masking might have an impact as to what you do with quarantining. Here again, we had really some thoughtful work done by our administrators, David in particular, working to identify what are some higher MERV rated air filters that fit our current system. We had some specially made to ensure that the ventilation system met our needs. We increased airflow quite a bit. Families, we encourage kids to bring jackets or maybe a sweater of some sort, because it could be colder, especially as we get into the start of the winter season, the fall season, as we're introducing more and more air at a more regular interval. And it's also important to note that we know transmission, but what we know from the data right now is that transmission around disinfecting and surfaces and the like, more and more data is coming out to tell us that's not the primary way in which individuals come in contact with the virus or the variant. That doesn't mean we should stop and not be thoughtful about how we go about cleaning. We had a fogging system that we implemented last year, and we intend to bring that out again into the upcoming school year. High-touch surfaces, things like light switches and locker doors and doorknobs, you name it, those things will have a touch to those as well. We really believe that being as proactive as possible around the cleaning is important for peace of mind, but then again, we also want to make certain that any staff member who might want additional resources in their classrooms want to be able to provide that as well. Last but not least, we also know that the next layered approach to this is making certain that we provide rapid testing in our schools. Our school nurses, Brian Johnson, thank you. You have reached out to obtain a plethora of rapid tests. The problem with obtaining those tests is that they have expiration dates on them. So we want to make certain that we have enough in the queue that if in the event that we see an individual demonstrating 2 or more COVID-like symptoms, that they participate in a rapid test. In a moment, we'll talk about what we would do with those results pending upon the decision that the board would likely make around masking and quarantining. But to have those resources for us is really important. In addition, we'll continue to have the sanitizers, the masks for kids, you name it. We want to do whatever we can to be good partners with our families and give them peace of mind as they see appropriate. So maybe that's a good place for me to stop. Oh, may I add one more thing around screening? We'll have 2 health offices like we did last year, right? We had one health office last year that was really for your typical bumps and bruises, but then we also had a health office that was specifically for isolation, in the event we had to isolate a student. So we'll continue to keep that as a practice going into next year. And we'll also continue to have our COVID dashboard on our district's website that'll be readily accessible for everybody. I've thrown a lot your way. Please ask any questions, offer any suggestions you think might be helpful for the cause.
I have a question on the dashboard. Will it reset? Because right now I think it goes back to July of last year. Will it reset for the, starting July going forward, or will it be still a
What do you think is a good practice?
I think it should probably reset with the school year. Like, we can keep the historical one if people want to reference it, but I don't know what other people think, but I would imagine it's a new school year, it's a new set of data. I would agree with that.
Maybe we have 2 links, one that will have the link to the old data for people who might want to see that, and then I'll be happy to work with our team to reset that. Thank you for asking.
Dr. Salerno, you mentioned public health in Madison-Dane County, and I just want to make sure we're clear on recommendations. So in the past, recommendations carried the weight of law in the Mount Horeb School District, is what we were told. It was later decided by the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. They ruled local health local health officials cannot close schools in their jurisdiction, correct?
Yeah, they did that in June after school let out, or just about the time to, yeah.
So we did not, as a board, have to listen to the PHNBC in retrospect, correct?
I think it's always wise for us to listen to what the scientists have to say, but in terms of taking those recommendations and translating them into requirements, to your point, you're absolutely right. They were not requirements.
Okay, so what the PHNBC states as a recommendation, our legal counsel, that does not carry the weight of law. Am I correct?
Right now, you're right, yes.
Okay.
There are no requirements under Public Health Madison-Dane County at this point. You're exactly right.
Question, follow-up to that, though. There is something about buses though, right?
Thank
There's a
you.
federal mandate on buses.
Yes, indeed. Everybody who, so Public Health Madison-Dane County was the question on the table, but you're right. The Department of Transportation at the federal level, I think through September 13th-ish, could be wrong about the date, does require that everybody who's on the bus be masked. This is adults as well as students. And we anticipate that this will be extended. So it's important that our community know that we must obviously follow the law, and so anyone who rides our buses will be required to wear a mask. That's a federal law.
Other questions about these 5 areas? All right, let's move along. As of this meeting, PHNBC, the CDC, and the Academy of Pediatrics have given the same recommendations on masking and quarantine protocols. Dr. Slater, would you please share what options that your team has developed for the board's consideration tonight?
So obviously, there's more than the 2 options that we have posted on the on the board docs. The board can certainly, we're happy to honor the board's intent. Let me see if I can pull that up for us. By the way, if you don't mind me just mentioning, for those who might be interested in knowing what is the latest data sets that we're getting from Public Health Madison-Dane County, this might be helpful to you. I did put this so everybody who comes on the board docs can see it. In terms of cases with children, cases with vaccination and the like. So that's all here for you. But to the point that President Saylor's referencing, we've come up with 2 options for the board's consideration. We believe one option might be more viable than another. Okay? The first option is one that really would honor, in the fullest intent, the CDC's recommendations, the Academy of Pediatrics, the Public Health Madison-Dane County, and that would be to ask all students to wear masks, except for those breaks that we talk about, lunch and the like. And that we ask our colleagues, staff, to model that behavior in the classroom. And most definitely, wear those masks when they're in common spaces, hallways, the library, the front office, and the like. That would be for vaccinated employees. Unvaccinated employees, and by the way, we don't know who is vaccinated or unvaccinated. In fact, there's some case law right now that's telling us that it's not appropriate for even us to ask that question because it opens up other kinds of health-related questions about that person's medical history. And you don't want to pull on that string and then suddenly find too much information. So we've been advised to be very sensitive in terms of fielding who is and who is not vaccinated amongst our employees. Outdoors. This is an important link, if you don't mind. This talks about, from Center for Disease Control, nationwide, county by county, what are the, I'll make this a little smaller so you can see the whole thing. What are the level of transmissions? And on a continuum of high to low in terms of contact, where they suggest we go in terms of outdoor matters. So I'm going to click on the great state of Wisconsin and try to get down to Dane County. And you will see right now, Dane County, according to the CDC, is now in the substantial category for risk of accessing the virus or even its variant. This changed, I think, maybe even on Thursday night or Friday night, sometime over the weekend. The proposal which you have before you is under option 1 would call on us to wear a mask in a crowded outdoor setting if we find ourselves in the substantial category, substantial or high transmission category. Now, that would be unvaccinated individuals, and vaccinated staff may choose at that time to wear a mask outdoors as appropriate. That's option 1. Now, by the way, the busing question that you thoughtfully raised, Lee, is also this is a non-negotiable for us. The reason why I feel like you can't divorce the question of masking and quarantining is because whatever you decide in masking needs to carry out, in my mind, and I think the team's mind, what we do for quarantining. And one speaker said it tonight very thoughtfully, is that if everyone wears a mask, it makes the job of quarantining a little easier. And here's why. Because according to what PHMBC and the CDC has said, is that if someone is wearing a mask and they contract the virus, only that individual, not their classmates, not the entire team, needs to quarantine for a period of time. And you can see that time that's being proposed there. When you start to open up those opportunities, as we'll see in option 2, that creates a little bit more work on contact tracing. I'm going to tip my hand a little bit in offering where our head's at when it comes to option 2. We're not afraid of that extra work. We think this is an opportunity for us to look at some variation of the masking protocol. And so I'm going to share with you our team's best thinking right now around what the board, we hope, might consider. Now, we've broken it down a little bit. I'm referring to option 2 if you're following along on the online version here. We've broken it down, again, same thing, indoors, outdoors, and then the busing, but then by grade levels. We know our children in 4K through 6th grade, typically those kids are not quite 12 years old. In fact, Paul did some data digging for us this morning. By December 1st, only about 30% of our 6th grade students will reach the age of 12. So it's an important distinction, because if that vaccine does become available, as they're prognosticating is going to happen in December-ish, maybe November, that still only means about a third of our students would be able to have access to that virus based upon the birth dates of our children. And so we're proposing that all those students, not just only for themselves, but for the other children who are in the classroom and have loved ones who might be immunocompromised, and those kids go back home, that we ask those students, that we expect them to be wearing their masks 4K through 6th grade. Continuing along that theme then, we're asking our staff to model as appropriate the donning of the mask, and to have that mask on definitely required when they're in common spaces, hallways, and like I said, front offices, and those sorts of things. Unvaccinated staff members would be required to wear their masks at all times. So maybe I'll stop there before I just check for understanding, because this can be kind of confusing. We want to make certain that people are following along. Okay. Let us take a moment then to differentiate what we know about our 7th through 12th grade students. Okay. We also know that it is not entirely acceptable to ask individuals, again, students included, whether or not they have been vaccinated. But we have a good understanding that there is a large swath of our student population who are aged 12 and older who have been vaccinated and have received both courses of the vaccine. And so here, we're proposing that we encourage students to wear masks in the classroom, not making it a requirement. However, when we're in common areas, that we ask them to wear those masks, especially because we are coming in contact with kids who might not necessarily be in our classrooms. You might remember me saying earlier, we're going to do our best to have kids be in the same seats as much as possible in the classroom, try to space out as much as possible. And this might help us with the contact tracing. To be sure, though, all unvaccinated individuals, I think all of us would agree when we leave this room tonight, is that those individuals absolutely should wear a mask, those kids. We cannot not have those kids be wearing a mask if they've been unvaccinated. Now, staff, same thing here. As you look, we're asking our staff, they're encouraged to please wear in grades 7 through 12 a mask in the classroom, to model that, but then also asking that if they've been vaccinated, that they definitely still wear it when they're in common spaces. Outdoors, this is where I'd like to introduce the concept of athletics. I mentioned today that our kids just had their football materials distributed, right? And so they actually hit it hard tomorrow. And we know being outdoors is going to be very difficult for kids, especially as it starts to heat up, to be wearing masks. And we'd ask for special dispensation for our athletes. I really believe that a lot of the social and emotional issues that our beautiful kids had to endure last year were because they didn't have access to the procedures, the routines of being a part of a high school, middle school kid. And I ask that we give very serious consideration to, before making a decision about what we do with athletics this year, that we go back to what we know worked well for us. And that was working with other school districts to find out what they were doing, who we were competing against, and develop athletic safety protocols like we had before, with the intent of letting kids practice and participate to the greatest extent possible. To move them in a direction that would automatically shut the door on them, I think might be too presumptive at this point. I think that to start where we are now and grow and evolve and continue to monitor the data as we have, I think is in our students' best interests. I think the team believes in the students' best interest, and we trust those individuals who are responsible for doing that scheduling and establishing those protocols to do likewise. And then lastly, busing, like I said before, we don't have the capacity to change that in any way, so we will honor it and make certain that we just communicate that to our families. Here again, I've thrown a lot your way, and certainly there's not just two options. There could be other options as well that maybe others are considering. May I answer any questions you may have?
I have a question when it comes to what's on here for quarantine. So, because I have 4 kids, in the district. Okay, so say my 4th grader comes in contact with somebody, then, and it's determined that she has to quarantine, then do my kindergarten, freshman, and senior all quarantine, or just her? Like, how does that work family tracing wise?
Thank you. So you said your little one, your youngest,
No,
under 12?
she's under 12 still, yes,
Yeah.
but 4th grade.
So unvaccinated, I think we have to discuss that as a team on a case-by-case basis. The fact pattern will help us determine whether or not quarantining is appropriate for everyone. I do know this much is true. When I read over the CDC documents, it does say that if someone's been vaccinated, and they've come in contact and been contracted the virus, that only that individual would need to be quarantined. I want to do a little more digging. I hate to give you an answer and be wrong, but we have the best minds around this that can help us find an answer.
Other questions, board members?
I move that masks be optional until further notice.
I'll second that.
Rod, may I ask for clarification? The full student body?
Yes.
Rod has made a motion, seconded by Jim, to make masks optional for 4K through 12. Further discussion? Richard, return to the active motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion fails. Are there other discussion points or motions to bring forth regarding the pandemic-related action at this time? Jessica.
I move that all students, staff, and visitors who enter a school district building, ride a school district bus, are required to wear a mask. That outdoor activities, including athletics, are optional.
Second.
Jessica's made a motion for universal masking indoors for K through 12, optional outside, seconded by Leah. Further discussion?
Jessica, just a question to that. You mentioned athletes be exempt of that outdoors. What about athletic teams who participate indoors? For example, football team starts tomorrow. Their first get-together is weightlifting tomorrow morning at 6:30. And before you answer that, I also want to bring forward to everybody's attention that of the medical emergency that occurred a few weeks ago, because we, as this board, mandated that we wear a mask when it's 90 degrees out, and a young athlete fainted as a result of lack of oxygen and an ambulance was called.
So I'd like to make a few comments I should have been quicker on the draw with after I made my motion. You know, we at the Education Committee tonight saw some slides about learning loss. We've heard a lot about social and emotional trouble that our kids are having. And I can't help but believe that at least some of that, maybe more of it than we ever could think, is due to the fact that our kids and our teachers are missing literally half of the communication value of their face when they're wearing a mask. Half the communication value. And so that means that speech is muffled, that kids can't see, that teachers can't see facial expressions, good or bad, positive or negative. I mean, I remember, as I was thinking about tonight, I remember my first grade teacher, Miss McDonald, and I remember how special I felt when she smiled at me. Let's look at it this way. Think about it this way. We've all watched the Badgers, we've all watched the Packers, and invariably the camera will come to some guy who's making all kinds of motions with his arms as he's sending the play into Aaron Rodgers or whoever the Badgers quarterback is. Think about how well the Badgers would play, or how well the Packers would play if they had to do without half of their communication signal. Think about that. That's what's happening to our kids in our classrooms today. It is not a small thing. It is a gigantic thing. 50% of the communication value of their face is gone when they put on that mask. And so the things that we worry about the most, the learning loss, the social and emotional harm that's been done to our kids since last March, think about where that comes from. Sure, some of it's all virtual, I get that, not being with other kids and all that sort of stuff. But think about not being able to see. Think about if that's the way we had to do our business. That if we hadn't worked remotely since last March, how difficult that would be for us. And then put on the clothes, the shoes, the backpack of a little kid and go to school and try to figure out what your teacher means with his or her face covered up.
Jessica.
I would just add a comment that my goal is for that all of our students are in session full-time for the entire year. And I think that this is our clearest path to making sure that our students, or as few students are quarantined, that we will hopefully never ever have to shift to a different, mode of instruction. I think this is the safest bet.
Further discussion?
With the motion at the table, I would also ask, when does this end, or when do we revisit this? I think if any of us have learned anything through the last year and a half, things change quickly. 11 days ago, every single board member, except one, voted to go away from masks. 11 days later, we're voting to go to masks. So at what point do we revisit this? And I do not think it's fair to say a quarter or semester break. If the motion at hand on table passes, I want everybody to think about, when do we revisit this?
Well, I think we visit it on a monthly basis. I mean, one of the things that we've been hearing over the last week, 10 days, is, oh, things are moving so quickly. Well, you know what? Soon enough, the shoe's going to be on the other foot. So let's I would say first meeting of every month, this is on the agenda until further notice.
That's a really good point, because all indications, when things move quickly, mean that it'll burn itself out quicker. So it could be by September 1st, we're in a very different place
I hope so.
than we are right now. Because things that move quicker, burn out quicker.
I also want to understand, what are the rules of the game? Last year we listened to PHMBC, now CDC, and I'm not saying any of them are wrong. I am definitely not an expert, and nobody in this room is. But who are we listening to? In 3 months, if this burns itself out, like you said, Diana, variant fifth wave comes along, who do we listen to? And is it the CDC, is it PHMBC, or is it who we want to listen to? So I think the rules of the game should be very clear.
We are basing, if this passes, it is based on recommendations and not requirements. So and there is no plan in place. We made sure of that 6 weeks ago. So we ought to be able, independent of recommendations elsewhere, we ought to be able to act as we want on that issue.
So the way the motion is stated, it isn't tied to public health or the CDC. So we could, in a month, come back and say, okay, they're still recommending this, but
Yeah, that's my point. Yep.
the numbers are not, they take, they're a, government agency, they take a long time to get through some of the red tape. So
Yep.
I think not tying it to public
Correct.
health or CDC or the American Pediatric Association or whomever. African.
So I don't want to complicate things, but I think this is all really important stuff. So we've already said first meeting in the month, we'll reconsider this issue. And that second, there's at least a kernel of a consensus about the fact that this will not be tied to any external recommendation. Now, in the interest of fair disclosure, if Public Health Dane County issues an order that requires us to do something, then unfortunately it's a different set of circumstances. But as long as it's a recommendation, then I think you're absolutely right.
I would also wonder if it should be a standing on every meeting, because this changed, Tuesday, Wednesday this came out, but last week everybody's like, yay,
Well,
yeah, so it's changing
right.
so fast that a month could end up, we say every month, we could
Yeah.
end up being like, well,
That's
we
fine.
need a special meeting, I don't know.
Fine by me.
But if what you're saying is true and it's gonna go quick, then I think we should keep it a standing.
We can do it as standing. I mean, the other option is to say it's monthly, and then we always add it if we need to. We always have the option to add something to the agenda, but at the very least, we look at it monthly. Either one is fine. Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of, that's why I'm kind of looking at what the administration has recommended with option 2, because, you know, things could change in 2 weeks, and we need to go to option 1, but just changed on Thursday.
Yeah, 2 points. One was literally saying what Diana was just going to say. I'm more attracted to option 2 because of that flexibility to add, if necessary, add a restriction versus start heavy and then say, well, this is changing daily so quickly. Now I feel like I haven't done the district well by making parents continuously change. 2, Jessica, is your motion one that would start effective immediately? Since we do have programs that begin today.
Yep.
Am I in a position to request a roll call?
Yes.
Okay, I request a roll call.
First, is there any further discussion on the
Yeah,
motion?
I have a question. With universal masking, I guess, or without, how does that work with band? Would that be like last year? Can you explain what happened last year with band and choir and how it worked?
Great question. It really limited our ability to have in-person band in terms of the actual activities. Expression of droplets through singing was an issue, so we really didn't do a lot of that. We taught about theory of music. So
So does that mean band camp stops?
it might mean that that would be necessary. It might mean. I have to talk with the team. I really value the band teachers' input about what they can and cannot do, and I hate to promise you something and be wrong. I would ask, not only the band, but I think about our volleyball girls, and I think about the eventual questions that will come out around who can come to the ball games indoors and the like. I'd really like to encircle ourselves with our team to make the right decision. So I'm wondering if this is more applicable to in-person academic kinds of things as opposed to some of the co-curricular, extracurricular activities that we know are going on right now.
Can we restate what the motion is before I say yes? Because
Yes. So all students, staff, and visitors who enter the school district building for academic reasons, but that doesn't quite fly. So I'm trying to think about how best to word it so that our band and student sports, the students who are involved in sports right now, that are possibly going to be indoors.
May I offer a suggestion unsolicitedly?
Yes.
Could we say all student, staff, and visitors in 4K through 12 wear masks, save, and then identify which
sure.
of those following
Yep.
groups wouldn't?
Mhm.
It would be, I'm hearing us maybe potentially being okay with band, any indoor sports, weightlifting, that kind of thing that's going on.
And choir.
Thank you, choir.
And that we'll review it at the very minimum. Well, let's just say that we'll review it as a standing item at every meeting.
Okay, I'm good with the revision. I second the revised motion.
Is there further discussion on the motion? Jen?
So just clarification, the 7 of us are making all decisions. We are responsible for every legal action, for better, for worse, coming forward. we carried this decision, the 7 of us. Is that correct?
I can't speak to that from the motion at hand, that wasn't addressed. Further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Jessica?
Yes.
Diana? No. Leah?
Yes.
Jim?
No.
Rob?
No.
Jeff?
No.
And I am a no. I'd like to put forth the administrative's recommendation, option 2, for our consideration.
Would it be minus music, band, choir, athletic, indoor athletics, everything we just said? Basically the same motion, but splitting out the grade level?
It's splitting out the grade level. It's splitting
Oh,
out
the grade level, right,
the
you know.
Is there a more eloquent way, co-curricular and extracurriculars that cover, is that really not?
I look to my friends and colleagues here. Would you think that they captured it?
From a co-curricular standpoint, if you're looking at this option, the only indoor co-curricular we would have that would be impacted by the mask would be 6th grade wrestling, which wouldn't occur for quite a while, because cross-country is the only other sport, if you will, offered through the district for 6th grade.
What about the musical?
7th, yeah, so athletically,
Okay.
that's what I'm talking about.
High school volleyball.
But that would be in the 7th through 12th year. So, because we have 7th and 8th grade athletics and all of that. So at least for the first semester. Same with the musical and some of those things, those are farther down the road. So really we would be talking about 6th graders essentially in band. And if we were to look at the requirements that we utilized in the spring, we were able to purchase and still have horn covers. There are some special masks that they're able to play instruments through. Flutes were a bit tricky, but I think the rest of the things were pretty good. Choir worked as well with masking, and it was more the recommendation for the things that we were following at that point had to do with the turnover of air. So we could sing for X amount of time, and then the room needed to do a full exchange before the next group did. But we were able to make all of those things work throughout the spring when masks were required. And in this situation, that would only impact our incoming 6th graders who will be here tomorrow morning for band. So we will figure it out. But I think it'll be nice outside, and that was the other thing that we did as well. We had band outside quite often for a while. So I'd have to look back at spacing and some of those things, but hopefully that helps a little bit.
And I know that
Academic protocol.
the band and music departments had a good chance to look at that research that was done in the winter and actually get a chance to really dive into, and outdoors, they even said that the out covers aren't necessary. They really the research really pulled back on a lot of that. Indoors was still 3 feet, but I think that research, once they did, at least my conversations with Will this past week, they kind of pulled back, especially outside. So if it's nice out, I think all intents were to get them outside.
And they are still utilizing the out covers and things in advance of this week. So, so really, the exemptions as far as athletics and extracurriculars would only be applicable to 6th grade wrestling. And then we have to implement the things that we did in the spring for band and choir.
So winter sport is.
That's a winter sport. Yeah, so we're ways out from that one.
Okay, so my motion is to recommend and approve option 2 with pandemic protocols given to band and choir students at the 6th grade level.
Second.
Motion made by Kimberly, seconded by Diana. Further discussion?
What does that do for athletics and music 7 to 12? I mean, we assume most of the kids are vaccinated, but what about those that aren't?
You're thinking on that, 15?
Thank you. Because we moved into that substantial category over the weekend, I'm wondering if we could make an alteration to this outdoors piece for everyone and work with our other school districts who are typically within our conference try to align our practice with theirs so that our kids don't have an unfair disadvantage, and establish some protocols, reinstitute the protocols, quite frankly, that we had last year that worked so well going into this upcoming season, at least for now.
I have a comment with that. With not following any other recommendations, I recommend that we be the leader that other school districts look to. I don't understand why we are always looking at somebody else when we can be the leaders right here. So that's just my quick comment there.
Thank you. Further discussion on my motion on the table?
So for our students, for both students and staff, we have something, designated for vaccinated people and unvaccinated people, but we have already said that we have no records of who's vaccinated or who is unvaccinated, and we are not going to ask.
It's not a question of not going to, and we can't.
We're not at liberty to be able to ask that question.
So really, this motion means that masks are optional for everyone except for our 4K students.
Okay, through 6th grade.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, forgive me. Did I hear you say that masking would be optional for 4K through 6th grade?
No, for everyone except for that.
Thank you, yes.
Basic, that's base students.
And President Sailors, we have, for that 4K through 6, we have, except for scheduled mass breaks, eating and drinking. Does this give any allowance to some of our administrators, 4K, ELC, PC, IC, for other times when a mask is not required?
For the staff?
For the administrators. Recess, for example. I mean, is that a scheduled mask break?
So that would be outside.
Okay.
It would not be required.
Okay.
Nowhere on here does it say visitors. So are we, that just is what it is, or? Or are we limiting visitors like we did last year?
I'd like to maybe have some opportunity to talk with my team a little bit more to address the visitor piece. We value having our parents be a part of our schools. I mean, we want them to see their kids practicing and playing and these sorts of things, but there might need to be some finessing in terms of how much and how long we might have somebody be in the building. So could I ask for a rain check and get back to you on that?
And that would also include like vendors and, those,
Yes.
It wouldn't just be like parent visitors, it could be,
Yes.
could be a lot of other people.
Further discussion on the motion on the table? Yes.
Will we, same as previous motions, revisit this at every meeting?
Yes, I can promise you that. I would love to have these candid conversations. But I'm trying to be serious, but it really is very important. It's too long to wait at this point to declare a semester. That's too long.
I totally agree.
Further discussion?
I call the question.
We'll do a roll call vote. Jessica?
Yes.
Diana? Yes. Leah? Yes. Jim?
No.
Brad?
No.
Jeff?
No.
And I am a yes. Motion passes. Thank you. I know that was difficult. Item 8, our second opportunity for citizens' comments this evening. Would anyone present like to make a citizen's comment?
Do I have to state my name and address again?
Yeah, let's do that.
Off of your van, what about your special needs kids?
There is some.
No consideration, not one mention. You said everybody. Even Dean County gave our special ed kids an exemption. You guys gave no exemptions. If he's not exempt, I will pull all my kids back out of your school district.
Certainly would like to honor the recommendations related to those children who do have physical or intellectual disabilities. Would obviously work with those students and their families to get what they need. So thank you. I appreciate you raising it. Certainly always front and center in our minds.
Other citizens' comments this evening?
I would like to say one more thing. I totally agree with her about disabilities. You're a huge disservice to kids. Obviously, you guys didn't have any feelings about those kids. They just got left behind just like they did last year. So, really too bad because they're the kids that are already behind. So, super disappointed in that you guys didn't consider them at all. They're just nobody apparently. I would also like to bring to the table that if we're going to talk about the numbers in Dane County and how we're in this, the orange group, or what did you call that? The more serious.
Yes.
Substantial.
Substantial, thank you.
Substantial, which I just wanted to tell you what that number looks like. That is 0.07%. That's substantial, you guys. 0.07%. This is ridiculous. Where are we moving with this? This is never going to end, ever. Like, there's always going to be a variant. This is a virus. And it's not going away. Like, we can't continue like this. And exactly the points that Rob brought up, like, we're doing so much psychological, physiological damage to our kids by wearing masks. And you're targeted the youngest kids of 4K through 6th grade. These kids they don't spread it. They don't, the chances of them getting it are so slim to nothing, and they don't spread it, and they don't die. Like, what are we doing? Our 4K through 6th grade, our least vulnerable population, we're masking them, we're muzzling our kids.
Further citizens' comments?
To say my name and things.
Yes, please.
An address, or is that
Yes,
not
please.
okay. Whitney Mulver, 10821 Blue Mountain Avenue, Blue Mountains. I just want to say thank you to Rob for the comments that you made. I really appreciate that. I also want to say that in school, full-time is the absolute lowest expectation for our families. We need to raise the bar and raise our standards. In school, full-time is an absolute given. That is not something that is negotiable and never, ever should have been. I have random comments, so I'm going to keep going. These meetings absolutely need to be available virtually. When you talk about access to information and equity, why would this not be something that is available online? Of all the things we learned with technology and the benefits of technology this year, I think there's a huge benefit to have these board meetings virtual. A lot of people attended. It was incredible. And I don't know if the point was to shut things down. That's how it feels. When the board meeting last time went to in person, there was not a virtual option. There was a lot of confusion. A lot of confusion. Incredibly, incredibly disappointing. I also want to mention that with the older grades, it's as if we are calling out those who are vaccinated and those who are not vaccinated. I don't know if that makes any sense. These children are not able to make these medical decisions for themselves. That is a conversation with the children and their parents, or their parents are making. Those kids are then carrying the weight of their parents' decisions to school. If their parent has reasons for them to not be vaccinated, and that means they're supposed to wear a mask in school, then everyone knows that's the case. Kids are already picking on each other and choosing who can hang out with who based on their parents' decisions about masks and vaccination, and I think that is just absolutely ridiculous. These kids are not mature enough to have that type of a conversation in the first place. I also want to mention on the rapid testing, I guess I would really like to say that I assume parents would be given, or would have to give permission for this, that it would be every single time, not just a one-time thing.
I would like more information on the accuracy of those tests and then the protocol that happens from there, because if there is a false positive, what will be followed up on, you know, if a negative comes later, whatever that may be. I know we can't ask about vaccinated, non-vaccinated, but I would be very interested to know on the COVID dashboard about breakthrough cases that is being reported. I don't know how that could come back through the district. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Whitney, are there other citizens' comments this evening?
So I guess mine is more just a question. How many quarantine cases did we experience? I mean, I know we were virtual for a lot of it, and then, but after we came back, I mean, were we having a lot of children coming down COVID positive where we had to quarantine students? I think that info is somewhere on the website, but I haven't looked at it. I mean, we should have some sort of a better grasp of that knowledge at this point. I mean, the peak of the pandemic was all going on, and we've been through this now. It's almost like I feel like we're acting as if this is fresh and brand new and we don't even know what to do. You know, or what I think we should be able to make some sort of a logical assessment somewhat based off of how many kids in Mount Horeb got COVID. How many times did we have to quarantine a class or a student or a family? You know, we should have that data by now. We've been a year through this. And so maybe some of this is going too far. It's inflated fear, okay? And fear is very powerful. And so I think if we go back and, you know, kind of start thinking about these things, like in the way that Rod said, you know, maybe don't harm the kids while trying to do something well-intended that might not really be that necessary. It might not be that helpful, but yet it could be harming them, and it could be hindering their learning and all those things. So I just was curious, how many people did we have to quarantine? How many cases did we have amongst our students? I know there was no deaths for children in the whole state of Wisconsin. So, I mean, I don't know.
We'll gather that information and get back.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Further citizens' comments? Last call for citizens' comments. Thank you. Our future agenda items are presented, and we'll be sure to revisit the motion that was brought forth today. The community's interest, please note, as Jessica mentioned, there is an annual meeting next Monday night at the IC. We're from you share the district's annual budget. Shall we, is there anything else to note for the coming meeting?
We have our board celebration dinner at the South Restaurant in Verona, 5:30. And we also have our annual meeting coming up on August 9th.
Thank you, Shelby. Item 11A, closed session. Contemplated closed session for section 19.85, paragraph 1, subparagraph C, consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
Second.
Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Rod, to move to closed session. Roll call, Jessica.
Here. Oh, yes, sorry. I am still here.
I don't know why they wouldn't work.
I acknowledge you.
Yes.